Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this for a moment. Two great nations, the United States and the Soviet Union, each in the grip of an intense struggle for supremacy in the Cold War. Both were determined to outdo the other in technology, power and influence, both willing to go to great extremes to achieve dominance. But in one of the most bizarre and dangerous chapters of this rivalry, they both contemplated, separately, the idea of nuking the moon. Yes, you heard that right, the moon. Now, the question arises, why would two superpowers, with all their resources, education and intellect, consider such an act? Why aim at something as beautiful and mysterious as the moon? This wasn't some science fiction plot, it was real. It was the result of the interplay between fear, ambition and perhaps a misunderstanding of the world around them. In this moment of cold calculation, the moon was not a celestial body, it was just another pawn in the game of global dominance. But luckily, both sides never went through with their plans. And today we must reflect on the choices humanity made at that juncture. During the Cold War, the world found itself entrenched in a fierce ideological, political and military standoff between two global superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. This period, spanning from the end of World War II in 1945 to the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, was marked by an intense rivalry that reached into nearly every facet of global life. It wasn't a war fought with direct military combat, but through proxy wars, espionage, technological innovation, and a battle for the hearts and minds of people around the world. At the core of this rivalry was the stark division between two competing systems of governance and belief: capitalism, championed by the United States, and communism under the leadership of the Soviet Union. Capitalism advocated for individual freedoms, private enterprise and free markets, while communism promoted state control, collective ownership and the idea of a classless society. These ideological differences were not just political but also social, cultural and economic. Each side sought to convince the rest of the world that their way of life was the superior path. The tensions were exacerbated by nuclear weapons. Both the US and the Soviet Union had developed and stockpiled vast arsenals of atomic bombs, and the threat of nuclear war loomed over every action and decision made by either side. The fear of mutually assured destruction, MAD, where any aggression would result in the total annihilation of both parties, was ever present, but so too was the drive to outdo the other in terms of military and technological capability. This race for supremacy extended beyond Earth's borders and into space. The space race became one of the most significant arenas for demonstrating technological might. The USSR's successful launch of Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, in 1957 caught the world's attention and sparked a fierce competition between the two nations. The United States, shocked by the Soviet achievement, was determined to catch up and ideally to surpass the Soviet Union in every aspect of space exploration. The technological race to the moon was one of the defining elements of the Cold War, a testament to the intense competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. By the mid-20th century, space had become the new frontier, and control over it was seen as a direct reflection of a nation's technological superiority and its broader geopolitical standing. In this context, the moon, as the closest celestial body to Earth, became a central objective in the race for dominance in space. It was not just a scientific endeavor, it was an opportunity for both superpowers to assert their strength on a stage that could not be ignored by the world. The space race began in earnest after the Soviet Union's successful launch of Sputnik 1 in 1957. This marked the first time in history that a human-made object had orbited Earth, sending shockwaves through the United States and the rest of the world. The achievement made it clear that the Soviets had the technological capability to achieve extraordinary feats in space. It also signaled that the balance of power between the two nations was shifting in favor of the USSR. Sputnik represented not only a scientific achievement, but also an ideological triumph for communism. The Soviets demonstrated that they could harness technology for their advantage, and in the process, they triggered a massive sense of urgency in the United States to close the gap. In response, President Dwight D. Eisenhower initiated the American space program in earnest, and NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was founded in 1958 to coordinate US space exploration efforts. This signaled the beginning of an all-out technological contest. The goal was no longer just to launch satellites or send rockets into space. It was to land a human on the… Both nations were now racing to develop the necessary technologies to achieve this monumental task. The competition between the United States and the Soviet Union was intense, with each side trying to prove their superiority in various aspects of space technology. The Soviet Union achieved several notable successes, including the first human spaceflight by Gagarin's journey, in which he orbited Earth aboard Vostok 1, was a huge triumph for the Soviet Union, demonstrating not only their technical capabilities but also their ideological message that communism could lead humanity into a new era of progress. In response to Gagarin's flight, President John F. Kennedy issued a bold challenge in 1961, setting the United States on a path to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. His declaration was a direct challenge to the Soviet Union and a call to arms for the American space program. The challenge was not only a technological one, but also a political and symbolic one. A successful moon landing would not just be a scientific milestone, it would be a declaration that American democracy, capitalism and ingenuity were superior to the Soviet model. In the midst of the intense Cold War rivalry, both the United States and the Soviet Union sought to assert their dominance on the global stage in increasingly dramatic ways, and space became one of the most potent arenas for showcasing technological and ideological supremacy. In the early years of the space race, the moon, as the closest celestial body to Earth, represented a new frontier that was still unexplored and untapped. It was an unclaimed realm that could serve as a blank canvas for both superpowers to stake their claim and make an undeniable statement to the world about their prowess. Amid the competitive fervor, ideas were floated, some seemingly outlandish, others disturbingly reckless, that might seem more suited to a science fiction novel than the real-world machinations of two of the world's most powerful nations. One of the most bizarre and chilling proposals which emerged from both American and Soviet military and scientific circles was the idea of detonating a nuclear bomb on the moon. The purpose of such an action wasn't scientific exploration or the search for new resources. Rather, it was an attempt to make an overwhelming statement of power and technological achievement in a way that would leave no room for doubt as to which nation had the superior capabilities. For the United States, the idea materialized in a project known as Project A119, which was considered in the late 1950s. The plan involved detonating a nuclear weapon on the moon to create a spectacular flash that would be visible to everyone on Earth. It wasn't just a military demonstration, it was envisioned as an opportunity to showcase the strength and ingenuity of the United States, to declare that it had the ability to reach out to the heavens and manipulate them as a sign of its dominance on Earth. The flash created by such a detonation would be impossible to ignore, and it was thought that the Soviet Union, along with the rest of the world, would be forced to recognize the technological supremacy of the US. Notably, the plan was never executed, but the sheer idea of using nuclear weapons in such an unrestrained and symbolic way. They had their own plans for using nuclear explosions as a display of strength. In fact, the Soviets were also considering a mission that involved launching a nuclear weapon aimed at the moon in order to create a dramatic impact that would capture global attention. At the time, both sides were not only racing to achieve technological superiority in space, but also in military might. And the symbolism of detonating a bomb on the moon had the potential to serve as a demonstration of that power. The moon, after all, wasn't just a geographical body in the sky, it was a powerful metaphor for reaching the future, and who controlled it, even in a symbolic way, could control the narrative of the future. Such plans, however, were driven by a combination of fear, rivalry, and an intense desire to secure political and ideological victory. The global tension and paranoia of the Cold War had led both nations to view space as a theater not just for scientific discovery, but for testing the limits of their technological and military might. At the heart of this thinking was the idea that nothing was off limits, and in the race for power and supremacy, the more dramatic and far-reaching the gesture, the more lasting the impact. In their eyes, the moon was merely another battleground against a canvas for demonstrating that their ideological and military might was not just confined to Earth. In the late 1950s, during the height of the Cold War, the United States found itself in an intense battle for global supremacy with the Soviet Union. The space race was in full swing, and space exploration was quickly becoming the most dramatic stage for asserting technological, scientific and ideological superiority. As both superpowers vied for dominance in the skies, the moon, previously an unreachable and mysterious object, emerged as a new battlefield where one could make a bold and irrefutable statement. The United States, under the leadership of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, was determined not to be outdone by the Soviet Union, especially after the Soviet success with Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, in 1957. The shock and fear that followed Sputnik's launch drove the US government to make bold moves in response. One of these was the conceptualization of Project A-119, a secret US Air Force plan that aimed to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon. This project, developed in the late 1950s and early 1960s, had an audacious goal: to create a brilliant flash of light on the moon that would be visible from Earth, signaling to the world that the United States had the technological might to dominate not just Earth, but space itself. The idea behind this flash was simple. The United States, facing growing anxiety over the Soviet Union's advancements in space technology, sought a way to demonstrate its own capabilities in the most spectacular fashion possible. A nuclear explosion on the moon would produce an explosion of light and energy that would be visible to everyone on Earth, regardless of geography. It was the ultimate visual statement, one that could not be ignored or misinterpreted. The flash from the explosion would serve as a sort of cosmic fireworks display, marking America's ability to project power beyond the planet's surface. The moon, a symbol of the unknown and unreachable, would be transformed into a symbol of US superiority. The plan involved the detonation of a nuclear bomb in the moon's atmosphere, or more specifically, on its surface, with the hope that it would generate a brilliant light visible across the world. This display would serve multiple purposes. On one hand, it was seen as a demonstration of the technological power the US had in its arsenal. The idea was that the flash would be both impressive and undeniable, sending a clear message to the Soviet Union that the US had the capacity to wield the ultimate weapon, not only on Earth, but also on the moon. On the other hand, it was a symbolic move, designed not to cause harm or alter the moon in any lasting way, but to give the appearance of control and domination over space itself. As we reflect on these moments from history, moments where the very notion of detonating a nuclear bomb on the moon seemed like a vile way to stake a claim to power, we are reminded of the intense forces that shaped the world during the Cold War. The idea of using the moon not as a place of wonder and exploration, but as a mere pawn in a political game, underscores the extreme lengths to which fear, pride and competition can drive humanity. Yet, even in those darkest moments, we were fortunate that the course of action taken was one of restraint. The story of Project A-119 serves as both a cautionary tale and a reminder of the extraordinary potential of human beings. When we reflect on our capacity to destroy, we must also remember our capacity to build, to create, and to rise above our limitations. The moon is still there, untouched by human bombs, a symbol of what is possible when we choose to reach beyond conflict and embrace curiosity, unity, and the pursuit of knowledge. In the end, it's not the flash of a bomb that will define us, but the light of humane ingenuity and the wisdom to know when to choose peace over power, understanding over fear, and exploration over domination. Let us carry that wisdom forward, not just in space, but here on earth as we continue our journey together. Thank you.